So Scott Ford leaves. So do you stay around when I think it was Coach Lefevre came out the following
Yeah.
year?
So Coach Lefevre came, and I know Coach Lefevre to this day, and that was difficult transition for everybody. I think we all fell in love with how Scott Ford communicated, how he spoke to the team, just the natural way, the gutsy way, all those things, and so it was more of still kind of that lingering. So it must have been a really tough thing for Coach Lefevre, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but I didn't feel like my heart was into it. I just felt like we were doing some things that I didn't feel I was organized or ready for. We'd go out and did football one day. We hadn't even talked about what we were going to do as far as scheme and so forth. So it was kind of, I guess he just wanted some individual stuff, but I get that. But still, I just feel a little bit of uneasiness, right? And there was quite a few coaches. Some things were said in the meeting one day that led quite a few coaches that were there for decades to literally say in that office, "I'm gone, guys." I'm talking about legends there like Johnny Hinojosa and Tony Alvarez and Joel Lopez, and I could probably name a couple more. So all these guys are now, I thought they were being Los Fresnos forever because they had been. And all these guys now are picking up jobs and starting to leave. And that scared me. And I just felt, what is happening here? So at some point I said, and then the thing became, you hear a couple of coaches say, well, we're just going to teach. We're not going to coach then. Because you could just kind of feel things were, and again, now in retrospect, I feel so bad for Coach Lefevre and what he was going through, and that must have been so tough. But at the end of the day, I went in one day and I said, Coach Lefevre, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to teach next year. And to this day, I feel it's one of the things I most regret in my life because I feel like I was kind of a coward in doing that. And then fast forward to not the last day of school, after that, the work day where you're sitting there, and me and quite a few others were reassigned. And I had worked so hard, to get to the point where they recognized me as a high school coach and then move up to the varsity staff. And then all of a sudden you're being told that we're reassigning you to whatever middle school. And that's when it hit me. Like, God, I made a mistake. What am I going to do now? So then Johnny Hinojosa, going back to Johnny, he had a lot of schools wanted Johnny because he's so just a guy of integrity in class. And one of the jobs he had lined up was Pace. And Johnny said, hey, David, look, here's Rene Medrano's phone number. Give him a call. I'm not going to go there anymore. I'm going to go to, I think, either La Feria or Harlingen South, and they need a science teacher. So I immediately called him that day. It's a work day. And some coach Ruben Rocha, he ends up spending some time in Los Fresnos. He answers the phone, and I let him know, well, I'm just listening for Coach Medrano, and here's my number if you can call me back. And I'm thinking, hang on, you're not going to call me back. And then it's about 4 o'clock, and there's on the loudspeaker or an intercom is like, David Cantu, there's a phone call for you in whatever, the teacher's lounge. So I pick it up, and it's Rene Medrano. And he's like, hey, who is this? And it was loud. He had a Jeep, and you could tell it was open. He can't hear anything I'm saying. Yeah. Finally, he heard a little bit, and he said, well, just come on Monday, and we'll talk. So I show up Monday to his office, and I sit down, and he was very cordial, but he apologized right away and said, look, I'm gonna start by saying I'm sorry, because I know you said something about science and this and that. We're gonna hire Farley Trevino to do that. And so, if you want to go meet the principal, you can. Her name's Jill Williams. And so I thought in my mind, well, you know what, I'm gonna do that. So I took about a day, and I put together all the stuff that in biology that I had done. I felt real proud that Sean Reber and I put together this great stuff we thought it was. So I went and had an appointment with her and spent about 20 minutes with her, and I felt like, wow, that actually went pretty good. And then I didn't hear anything back, and then it's July, and then Rene Medrano calls, and David, you still looking? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, you're gonna have to resign from Los Fresnos though, because our board meeting, it was that time where if how do you say, you can't resign from the school district, all that kind of. It was close to the deadline, but they weren't going to put you on the board agenda unless you had resigned. That was the thing. So now I'm like, oh my God. So I resigned and just try to keep like faith that BISC. So I get approved. I'm at Pace, and so right away, and you know what? It was kind of cool because I grew up in Los Fresnos, and that's all I knew. And then all of a sudden, I'm coaching at Los Fresnos. So I kind of know everybody. And then all of a sudden I'm in a place where nobody knows me. Not a single coach really knew who I was. So and there was something good about that. And so I worked there as coaching defensive ends, and it was a year where we were very competitive. I'm very proud of that year. And then in the spring semester, as a matter of fact, our defensive coordinator had taken off for a little while to handle some family illness or something. As a matter of fact, Patrick Inskeep, he left to San Antonio for a little while. He was our DC at Pace. And Rene Medrano was always a fan of Noel Villarreal, who was our DC here towards the end. And he said, "Hey, Dave, I want you to go ahead and you're going to, as Inskeep's gone, you're in charge of the defense. Put in some of that stuff Noel does." And so I did that. Went immediately, just jumped into it. So we started going against each other, and we had some success and got after it. Kids were having fun. And so we had meetings every single morning in person at Pace High School. And that's one of the things that a lot of coaches there complained about and didn't like it and didn't see a need for it. But Rene Medrano was extremely goal and task oriented and extremely organized. And anyways, so one day in a meeting, the office probably about this big for about 20 coaches. It was small, but he's got his coordinators in this little office. He got the rest of us over here, and he's got his foot up on the side of the wall between the doorway, and he keeps staring at me, and he's saying, "So David, I hear your boy's coming back." and to that point, I had heard nothing. I had no idea what was in. I go, "What are you talking about, Coach?" I really didn't know what he was talking about. He goes, "Your boy, Scott Ford. We heard he's coming back." I'm like, "Coach, he's not coming back. He's doing good over there. He's from there. His wife, they went to his wife's hometown and all that. He ain't coming back." So he goes, and Rene Medrano had such a funny look on his face and a smirk and just acted like he must have known something that others didn't. But lo and behold, one day I'm teaching chemistry, fourth period at Pace High School, and the phone rings. And the phone on my desk, I was a floater, but it never rang. So I was like, "What in the world?" So it's ringing, it keeps ringing, and it hangs up. And then I'm lecturing, whatever, and it starts ringing again. But finally, they're kind of doing work. So I pick it up. I said, "Hello, Pace High School." And then she's like, "This is David Cantu." And I said, "Yes, it is." He goes, well, listen, Scott Ford's coming back, and he wants you to come back. We need you to come back. And it's Dr. Sylvia Atkinson.
Okay.
So
okay.
I don't know how she got the number to that classroom, but she's telling me that. I said, "Well, okay, well, I'm happy here at Pace. Coach Medrano's been great to me, so, but I'll give Scott a call." So soon thereafter, it's baseball season, and I talked to Scott on the phone, and he wants me to come over in the same sort of like an assistant role. And I said, "Well, Scott, I can't make a lateral move like that because Coach Medrano's he really was great to us and my family, my wife." And he got upset with me that day, and he just hung up the phone on me, I think. I don't remember. But I remember thinking, God, I blew that. So then he calls me the next day and says, "Look, why don't you come over? Spencer and I are staying at this house at the Port Isabel, and just let's talk." And so I went over there, and it was pretty cool just to hang out. But at the end of the night, we walked to the car. He said, "Look, this is what we're going to do. I want to make you my co-offensive coordinator or passing game coordinator and coach quarterbacks. What do you think? Take it or leave it." And I said, "I'm taking it, Coach." Like, "Yeah, that's a promotion. I'm in." So that's how all of a sudden I'm going back, coming back to Los Fresnos with that. And so I share that. Scott Robb, who is one of my best friends to this day, he ends up being the run game coordinator, coaching offensive line. I'm coaching quarterbacks, doing pass game coordinator. That situation lasted 2 years. And finally, after 2 years, Scott Ford told us, Scott and I, "Hey, look, the board ain't liking this no more. This 2 coordinator thing, I got to choose one." And then he left us like that for like a week. And then finally he tells us, "David, you're going to be the OC. Scott, you're going to be coaching O-line and so forth." And that must have been such a tough thing for Scott Robb because he was brilliant. One of the smartest people anybody ever wanted to meet. Like, he has a Rain Man sort of mind in regards to math and chemistry and all that. But he took it, and he didn't nothing. I mean, he was still that great coach he was. So that's what happened. So for the next 4 years, I'm in that position. And then finally, Scott Ford keeps us in the dark about a lot of things. I guess he didn't want us to know he was applying for certain positions up there because he may have thought we would have thought lesser of him, and that's tough. I'm not going to criticize him for that at all. But at the end of the day, he calls me one night and says, "Hey, Dave, I'm gonna be leaving. I'm taking this job. I'm gonna get approved, and I want you to be the next guy there in Los Fresnos. I'm gonna help you do everything I can." I'm like, "Scott, no, I don't deserve that. I'm not ready for that. You're the one calling all the plays. I'm just kind of suggesting at times, and so it's not even something I cared about wanting. So I shared this conversation with my wife Laura, and I was just like I'm telling you, like, Scott said this, but I ain't doing that. Like, I don't want to. I'm not going to follow this. No way. People will be trying to run me out of my own hometown. I can't deal with that. And lo and behold, during that same time, Rivetta was up for grabs, and without telling my wife, I applied for that job. Just kind of thinking they're not going to call me. They're not.
I get it.
So then all of a sudden, around the same exact time that when all that's happening, I get a call and they're calling me for an interview, and then I'm a finalist, and then after that, they call me back and said, "Hey, you did that." And Tim Snyder, the principal, says, "Hey, I don't have to be calling you right now because I only have to call the one that gets it, but I feel like I had to. You did a great job in both interviews, but we're going with Jaime Infante, who was the head coach at Lyford. And so I was like, oh, no, great. No, I'm fine. So I was already starting to think, though, like, oh, man, what am I going to do, right? Because whoever the new head coach, I ain't going to be his OC. I'm going to, so I was already accepting the fact that, okay, I might be a freshman coach again, whatever. That's okay. That's the way it is. And but then I get a call back one night, and they say, hey, listen, Jaime Infante's dropped out, and you're the next guy. You want the job or not? And I was like, oh my goodness. That's when I had to tell Laura about everything. And she's like, what did you do? And what was your record last year? Because I think they had some tough times and some records that weren't real good. But that's what happened. I hope I didn't skip anything in between. But that's how I ended up at Rivera.
Coach, and I'm looking at you. You were under Coach Leonel Garza, legend of Los Fresnos.
Yeah.
Then Scott Ford comes in, which again, another legend in Los Fresnos, became a legend in Los Fresnos. Yeah. You went to René Medrano, legend.
Hey, and honestly, and in my opinion, underrated. A lot of people don't, they look right away at the final record, but when you're in Brownsville, it's a challenge. And then when you're, back in those days, during most of Medrano's time, it was kind of the Tom Chavez era, and back then they were able to get it, the athletes kind of where they wanted to. It was a challenge. But the way he ran his program, it was very, very impressive. Yeah.
Coach, so when you go to Brownsville Rivera and become the head coach, did you take a little piece of all those legends of Ford and Medrano and Leonel Garza? Did you, and with a little bit of your twist of your stuff too?
No, absolutely. And then the very first meeting I had with him was I kind of stole from Scott Ford because right away, my first message to those guys, the players in the squad room, they called it, was, look, guys, man, I'm here. I ain't going back. Like, I'm burnt my ship. So one of our lessons was burn the ships. And what it meant was, if we're going back in their ships. Like, I'm all in. And little by little, that was such an experience, though, Lonnie, that to this day, I look at it and very fondly, but I can't believe what happened. Because as soon as I get there, the kids, little by little, were probably I'm sure very skeptical. Like, who's this guy? And this and that. And I get calls from the principal, Mr. Snyder, asking me, hey, the kids were really close to the principal. I'd never seen that before. But he's asked me, hey, the guys want to know, Marty and all these kids, did the kids in Los Fresnos take steroids? I'm like, no, Mr. Snyder. These kids in Los Fresnos, they worked their tails off, and they never took any breaks. And they were in a weight program that's like second to none, and not a lot of kids could actually like stay with it. The ones who did, though, were tough as they come. And yes, some of them were gifted talent, with talent too. So, but the answer to that is absolutely no. So they were, that happened. So the kids, I felt a buy-in. It was a gradual. But the coaching staff there was not accepting me whatsoever. I think they were hopeful that one of their coordinators, Bill Dean, was going to get the job, and I see why. Bill Dean's a great guy, a great coach, very knowledgeable, O-line guy mainly, and I could see right away. The kids loved him, and he was there with me. And the first day I let him run the weight workout the way he did it, and there was some things that they were good, but overall, I told myself that while it was going on, we're changing immediately to what we're going to do. So the next morning, we're watching video of Los Fresnos weight workout, I'm trying to coach all the coaches up on how we're going to do it now. Try to emulate and try to just mirror image, and brought in music to the weight room. They had never had that, and I felt like that was a real positive thing for us. But going back to the coaching staff, I remember a meeting, maybe our first after a week, and there's 10 coaches there, and I'm all right, guys, and hey, getting off to a good start. I like the way the weight's going, blah blah blah, but look, let's start thinking about the summer, because we're going to do our UIL lets you have strength and conditioning now, and it was pretty new back then, Lonnie. Maybe we were in the year 3 of that, because there was a time when none of that was allowed. And right away when I said that, I would say at least 2 coaches started just nodding their head. And so it stumped me. It made me lose almost my train of thought. But I called them out in front of everybody, and I said, "Well, Coach, why are you nodding your head in disagreement? Well, what's the deal?" And the guy, "Coach, you don't get it. These kids, we can barely get them to show up to practice. We got to be driving to their house to get them to show up for summer practice. And you're talking about them coming in the summer and working out for workouts. And I just don't think our kids are going to do that." And then the other coach, I said, "Well, Coach, what are your thoughts?" "Yeah, well, Coach, you need to understand these kids aren't like they are 15 miles north of here." So he meant Los Fresnos. Yeah. They're not like that. And then he made a little swan song about how all these kids, they all work and this and that. And you know what? A lot of the kids in Los Fresnos did too. But it just was the standard. It was just what we were going to do. And so it was just an attitude of, I felt like, it was just negative. It was negative. And little by little, it felt like every single day a new coach was coming into my office saying, "Hey, Coach, I called this assistant superintendent. They're going to transfer me to Falk tomorrow." And then another guy coming in, "Coach, I'm going to go join Hector Garcia at Porter." Wow. And then next day, I'm going to go with whoever was at Hannah. I mean, it got to the point where we're probably in April, and it's me and a guy named Edward Garcia. We call him the Wall. And that's it. That was our varsity / JV coaching staff and athletic period and freshman period. And that it was like, "Okay, Wall, it's me and you, man. So, hey, I'm going to start teaching these guys the offense. I'm going to take out all the skill guys today. You lift the linemen." So that's what we did all athletic period. And then, all right, next day, I'm taking the linemen. You lift the skill guys. So we just kind of did that.
Coach, it's kind of like middle school. Like go back to right when you first started, when it was just 2 guys. And
I tell you what, man. But the kids were excited because they could tell right away that we were going to throw the ball. And I'm going to be honest with you, Lonnie. One of the big reasons I even applied for that position was because of baseball. Because the year before, or that last year, it was J.J. Sanchez's junior year. He was a Rivera pitcher, and one day we played a baseball game here at Los Fresnos against him, and it went 9 or 10 innings, and J.J. Sanchez pitched the whole entire game, probably threw 160, 170 pitches, and we won 2-1. But I left that day just, this kid is special. Like, oh my gosh, and every time you get a strikeout, and he would just all this enthusiasm and energy, and I just fell in love with his competitiveness. So I knew so when I applied for the Rivera job, I was just thinking of J.J. Sanchez. Shit, he's got one more year. Maybe. So, anyways, going back, it's just me and Wall. We're doing our thing, and we did the interviews for coordinators, and both of them were going to come over from Los Fresnos because there was a new regime coming in. There was a lot of change. So Patrick Boutwell came and joined me for defense. And then Scott Robb, who I mentioned earlier, he came over to join me as offensive coordinator. That first year at Rivera was pretty cool. We started off 0-4 though, but we're having games where we're scoring points, where JJ's throwing the ball around and we're doing good things, but we can't win. We can't. We're up against Corpus Christi Moody 35-10, I think, at halftime, and we lose that game, 49-42, some crazy score. I remember telling Laura, we're about to play Hannah. It's Thursday, and Friday we're going to play Hannah. And I said, "Laura, I don't know if I'm ever going to win a game in my whole life. This is very, I don't know. This is tough." And so we get down against Hannah 17-0, I think, and maybe 21-0. But all of a sudden we get a field goal right before the half. That gave us a little bit of hope. And then right before we go out for halftime, I don't know what I got, but I just, look, this is what's going to happen. We're getting the ball first. We're going to go down. We're going to, and I'll be honest with you, that halftime, Scott Robb put in some little adjustment to a play we had. We called it 95-25. Basically, we had our outside receiver on trips, clearing it out, our number 2 running a flat, and number 3 running vertical. He goes, they're not going to cover that. That safety's going to get over the top and cover number 1, and then that other safety's not going to be able to get number 3. And Scott Robb was right on. I think we hit that play 4 or 5 times for about 180 yards. I mean, it was amazing. I had about a fourth quarter, I had to start going empty to just try to hold that safety. Because I said, okay, he knows what's coming, but let me send that running back on a corner route, and maybe we can hold him just a little bit. And it just kept working. It was ridiculous. So we're going down at the very end, and we're at the 5-yard line, the 2-yard line, the 1-yard line. It's I think third or fourth down, and then I call this a quarterback ISO. I don't know what to call. And so JJ goes, and they hit him in such a way where his body does a John Elway helicopter, and boom, the ball lands on the line, and he just comes off like I saw him as a pitcher of Rivera, just and then so we win that game 30-27. I still have that ball at my house, signed by all those guys at Rivera, and then all of a sudden, who do we play next? I can't remember who we play next, but we go on this win streak. So we went from being 0-4, and then we beat Hannah, we beat Porter, and then we're facing Pace, and Pace had a freaking fantastic year, a group of talent that year. They had Aiden Alejandro at tailback, they had Kyle Carter, all-state safety, they had all sorts of pieces, and but I went to that night. I was like, I'm not looking at my play sheet at all. I'm just going to call this from my heart, and I'm going to be like a riverboat Scott Ford gambler. I'm just going to do it. Any fourth down, hey, wing, we're going for it. All of a sudden, we're playing this incredible game. They still got like a 10-minute version of it on YouTube. I love it. I watch that every once in a while. I used to get in a good mood, and we end up winning that game in just crazy fashion, where we get the ball back at the end and an interception, but now we still got to kill like 2.5 minutes, and it's 4th and 2, and we're backed up like in our 19-yard line. And I told Scott Robb, I ain't punting this damn ball, Scott. You're like, damn it, Dave. So we go for it, and we barely get it. So all of a sudden, we're winning this game that we probably shouldn't have won. So all of a sudden, now we're 3-1 in district. San Benito beat us our first district game, and Dave Evans was over there as a DC. Spencer Gant was a San Benito. So we were 0-1, but then we're 3-1, and now everybody's starting to make a big deal about Rivera High School, and that kind of threw me off. Like, what in the world, So, and that was something we really couldn't handle very well. I could tell all week. We were starting to get the stories in the paper about how great we were. And then Wesco reminded us how great we were that following Friday. I think they beat us 50-10. And then we come back to Los Fresnos. So now it's the game where, okay, I'm coming back to my hometown. And, man, I don't know what's going to happen, because Wesco just put it to us, or are we going to show up and compete? And that game right there was one of the most proud, because we lost. We lost 37-29, but our kids came to play. Like we didn't – it was my fault we lost too, because at halftime – I want to say we were probably up 17-14, and I could have just kind of, let's get into the halftime with the lead, and I got greedy, wanted another one, call a wheel route, and Christian Lasoya, he later tells me, Coach, as soon as I saw the inside receiver run that wheel, I knew that curl was there, so he jumped it, took it, pick six, right before the half, and still, though at the very end, we're onside kicking to try to get it back, so I was really proud, because the year before that, Los Fresnos, we beat Rivera, I think 63-7 or something like that. Very dominant. At halftime score was, I want to say 56-0. I think we ran 9 offensive plays and had 7 touchdowns. It was one of those sort of games. Yeah. So for us then to be able to show we can compete, that was cool. But we did not get into the playoffs, and the reason why was because I think it was Pace beat San Benito, or San Benito beat Pace. Something that shouldn't have happened. So all of a sudden we're left out. But it was still a really cool year. We beat everybody in Brownsville, so Tito Mata's out there last game giving me this humongous 6-foot trophy. But I'm just feeling like what? We didn't make the playoffs? This is horrible. Like, I'm not used to this. But that group of kids at Rivera, even to this day when I see them, we're just really tight. And there's a lot of love there and big hugs that happen. I think they were seeing what was happening. They were seeing that, oh my God, we're down to 2 coaches. Like, what the hell's going to happen to us? But I made it a point to just bring a lot of passion every day, and I was just like, man, I'm all in. I can't fold now, right? So the second year at Rivera was different, because that first year I went there because of J.J. Sanchez, and there was quite a few other seniors who were very good, like a Richard Reyes, and it was a good group, but there was only like 7 underclassmen on that varsity team, and then our JV was bad, 0-10. Now our freshman team then that was going to come in. We were excited because it was a talented bunch, but I was very committed to leaving them all on the freshman team.
Yes.
Yeah. And I made a mistake, Lonnie, because guys like Danny Elizondo, who ends up becoming a legend in Brownsville, and Edward Rubio and Chris Godoy and Angel Espinosa, these guys probably were ready to play varsity football, and I should have just thrown the dice and done it. I just was never used to that, so I was a little reluctant. But so that second year we go 2-8, and then but bigger than that was The Thursday before the first day of school of my second year there, Tim Snyder's fired. So the principal who believed in me and brought me in was gone, and they brought in a really good buddy of Tom Chavez named Hector Hernandez, and I don't blame him. Like, he wanted Tom Chavez back. He wanted to bring that back. I get it, but for every single day of that school year, I can't begin to tell you how horrible it was. When you know someone's out to get you, that's what it felt like. And finally, he got me in June we had a little competition there at the end of the year where somebody bumped a nose and they made it seem like a kid was paralyzed. And really, it was absolutely nothing. It literally was nothing. The kid later, they tell me they're reassigning me to the wellness center, and I'm getting fired because I was a risk to these kids and I put them in danger and this and that. And then when it turns out, I didn't ask any questions. HR is telling me this, but I go the next day to revet because we're in summer conditioning already. They told it was the day 6. It was the Tuesday of the second week. So I was like, well, shoot, I'm just going to show up again and let them know what happened. I'm gone, right? And so we're all in the squad room again, and it's packed. I mean, we have the squad room that fits probably 30. There's about 90 to 100 kids in there. And I'm just thanking them for accepting me and let them know that, hey, I'm going to be gone, but you're getting a great coach. Tom Chavez is a legend here. He's done all these great things, and y'all be excited about it and give him everything you got. But, I thought, well, this is it. I think I felt like I was done with coaching. Now, going back to that real quick. So that meeting's over, and a couple of us are shed a few tears, and we're hugging and saying goodbyes. And then as I leave that room into the main locker room, and everybody's kind of gone, and the kid who had hurt his nose, he's walking my way. And I'm like, son, they told me that you're the nose injury, and it goes, oh, no, they called it a microfracture. I'm going to be fine in a couple of weeks. I don't even have to have nothing on it. And so it was just a way.
Yeah.
They got me. Right? And so, so I end up at the wellness center. So the wellness center is an old Central Middle School gym that's by Sam Stadium. And it was great somewhat because I was over there doing like 2 hours of elliptical. I had nothing to do. I had an office that was as big as a house, and it was ridiculous. So now all of a sudden I'm being told I have to schedule like people's recreation and all this. And the good thing is I had signed a contract, so they were going to have to pay me the same, but it wasn't much. I was probably making the least in probably the whole valley. But I was making 75 as a head coach, but still, I mean, that was still a little bit more than a teacher. But all of a sudden it's July, and Sammy Montalvo calls me. Sammy was somebody that Coach Amaya had on his staff, and then he was on Scott Ford's staff. When Jeff Lefevre came, he went to Lopez. He left, but we remained friends. And he's like, Dave, Mark Guest is becoming the AD in Brownsville. And I go, and Sammy? Brownsville Veterans is going to be available. It's a perfect job for you. And I'm like, Sammy, give me a break. Why the hell they hire me, dude? I'm coming off a 2-8 year, and that's not going to happen, Sammy. So he's like, dude, just throw your name. You never know. So, I mean, he was right. And because it was so late, it was like the middle of July, and they're looking for a head coach. So at the end of the day, they said 8 people were able to get everything in and become qualified candidates. So I go into this interview, Lonnie, and there's everybody in the world from Veterans there. They must have had 15 people there. But I felt so darn relaxed. I literally walked in there, he just threw my jacket off and put it on the table. And so we just felt like we talked for, a good amount of time. And it worked out. And so I ended up being a finalist with who was the DC there, Larry Vincent. But at the end of the day, they went with me. But I'm going to go back to my wife now. I'll tell you the real reason why I got that job. So I get the job because the principal is Mary Solis. And she's a wonderful human being, and her little boy was involved in baseball, as mine was. And this goes back to a Little League baseball game that took place. It's after you're done with Little League. I guess they call it, the Senior League or whatever. But there's a Saturday afternoon where our Los Fresnos group of kids plays the Scorpions from Brownsville. And anybody who's kind of knows about it, the Scorpions were the elite. They were some of the best kids in Brownsville brought together to dominate. And they did that. They won games not normally 20-something to 0. Well, that Saturday in Los Fresnos, they won, but they won something like 3-2 or 2-1. So that Sunday, I'm getting a call from the Scorpions coach. His name is Moody, and Coach Moody asked me, he goes, "Is this coach got through?" I'm like, "Yes, sir." It was your son, David Jacob? "Yes, sir." "We want him to be a Scorpion. He needs to come pitch for the Scorpions." And like, oh my God, you're gonna make this is gonna be a dream come true for Dave, because he always talked about the Scorpions and how they were that. So all of a sudden he's playing for the Scorpions, but more importantly is You know, they're practicing at Pace one day, at Porter one day, at Lincoln Park one day. But my wife takes her chair and she's watching practice, and guess who sits next to her at all those practices? Mary Solis, the principal at Vets. So they became really good buddies through that and became very fond of each other. So let's be honest. I think when it was all said and done, I think she was more hiring Laura's husband rather than David Cantu.
Gotcha.
And I think that it definitely didn't hurt. So you kind of never know how things are going to happen and turn out. But
Coach, one thing before we get into you being the head coach of veterans, I'm going back to when you said it was just you and I think you said, was it Walt or Wall?
Wall, W-A-L-L.
Oh, yeah, Wall. Okay. You said some other coaches nodded they won't come to summer conditioning camping. But when the day that you left, you said there was about 90 kids.
That's because there was 90.
And it was day 6.
And that was because there was 90 boys, but there was always also about 25, 30 girls. So that I'm glad you brought that up, Lonnie, because I kind of forgot that. But that was big. That first summer, we did do it, even though nobody, maybe 2 or 3 guys would show up reluctantly. And we had anywhere from 28 to 35 guys show up. But the core showed up, the J.J. Sanchez's, the Richard Reyes's. So they kind of set that and they worked their tails off. And then so much so, Lonnie, I'm going to tell you a story. So much so that at a certain point during our summer strength and conditioning, in which that's all we did. At that time, they didn't let you do any sports specific. So I'm not going to break any rules like that. But all of a sudden, I get an email from the central office, HR, saying, we're going to need to come by and investigate a complaint against you, that you're doing illegal football drills. I'm like, what the heck? So all of a sudden, I go, you're welcome to come. Send them all. Send your whole HR staff. Whatever. I kind of had a bit of a bad attitude about it. So the next day, the lady shows up. She's sitting in the back of the weight room. I started every single day with our character lessons that I stole from Scott Ford. It's called Coaching to Save Lives. It was written by D.W. Rutledge and Coach Dennis Parker. And that's what Scott Ford brought in that I think was the biggest difference of them all. So I was doing this with our Rivetta kids every day. It was me. And it would take us 10, 15 minutes, whatever it took. So the lady just sat there and was taking notes. And then we did what we did during our strength and conditioning. And then we're gone. And then that's probably a Monday, Lonnie. And then by Thursday, I get this email. Like, oh, right away you see it's a long email. Basically, it's that lady and writing to me and CCing every principal, HR, whatever, saying how every program in Brownsville should be doing exactly what I saw here on this Monday morning. Like these kids learned, they had a character lesson that was relevant, and they worked. I didn't see anything that was football-wise. It was what it was. And it was just an essay of compliments. So then I started thinking, I called the lady, and I said, ma'am, I need to know, like, where did this come from? Well, back then they would send, Brent BISD would have their summer rec people, they had a couple of favorites that they would send, and hey, here's a paper. Like, it was a bogus assignment. But one of those guys went back and reported to Tom Chavez that we were doing football drills. So then I called Coach Tom Chavez. I said, Tom, why don't you just call me? Like, if you had an issue, I heard came from you at the end of the day. Why wouldn't you just tell me if you thought it was illegal? Well, Coach, and I said, let them handle it. I go, Coach, you could have taught. You could have come yourself, and so that right there was something that was out of my character, because I'm not one that's very probably confrontational at that time, but I felt like I had to. Like I felt like even when I got that job, Tom Chavez and at the time their AD Joe Rodriguez, they were very much against my hire because they hated Scott Ford. They absolutely hated him. And Tim Snyder later told me when Tim Snyder wanted to hire me, one time Infante was out, there was shouting matches in that office that they did not want to bring anybody in associated with Scott Ford. So that was me going to Brownsville. I was the outsider, the Los Fresnos guy, and that's why all those other coaches right away were just not on board, or their heart wasn't into it, kind of the way I had said I was. But yeah, that's.
When I caught that, I was like, I remember they saying there was going to be kids, and then you were.
So the second summer, we had a good year. We're the city champs, and we were playing competitively, so we had more of a good juice, good energy going. And then so that second summer, I kid you not, Lonnie, the first day I remember looking at the coaches in the room like, holy cow, this is a great thing that we have a problem now. We need to split. Our weight room's too small. So 2 coaches took kids outside and 2 coaches stayed in the weight room. And so we did our thing, but I kid you not, that the day they reassigned me, we must have had 120 kids there. And
Awesome.
and really, and all those coaches, like you said, were saying, hey, there's no way that's going to happen. It did happen. It did happen. So I left there understanding that not only that, but when I got to Rivera, when I was hired in February 2010, in the varsity class, there was probably 27, 28 kids. Varsity / JV. These are all your guys, sophomores and juniors. I was coming from Los Fresnos, we had 120, 115, whatever. Freshman class had about 27, 28 kids. And that hit me right away. And Tim Snyder knew it was going to hit me. So he called me in and said, and as soon as he did, he gave me a list, or he was already prepared. He goes, you need to get all those guys back in the football class. They all got out. They couldn't stand what was going on. And they all got themselves, including JJ. JJ got out of the class.
Wow.
So I have this list, about 15 kids, and their class schedules. I'm just supposed to go knock on classroom doors during class. And that's what I did. And one at a time, they all reluctantly, I think, said, I'll give it a chance. But our class grew. So, but our athletic period, when they kind of booted me out, we had about 65 in our sophomore junior class and about another 55 in our freshman class.
Awesome.
So, but it was tough, man. That I was going to all sorts of Garcia Middle School events, functions, banquets, not just their games. I was going to anything where they were getting an award for perfect attendance. I was there because I was being told, hey, you got Jaquil Evans at Perkins Middle School? He ain't going to Perkins Middle School. He's already going to Hannah High School. It's a done deal. Like, oh my gosh. He's a 6'2", one of the fastest kids. He's the fastest kid in Brownsville by far. So I needed to make sure I tried to do everything I could to build a relationship with Jaquil. And he showed up. And so did Danny Elizondo from Garcia. And so did Edward Rubio. And so did Chris Godoy. All these kids that they told me were going to go elsewhere, they all said, shoot, let's give this a chance. And that was big. And that at the end of the day, I think helped Tom Chavez, because those guys, that freshman group of Elizondo and Godoy, et cetera, they went 8-2 in a district that included San Benito, Los Fresnos, Harlingen. 8-2 is pretty stout. And then, so that group we knew was going to be great, but we just never had a chance to take it from there, right? So, but it was meant to be. And so now all of a sudden I'm going to Veterans, have a great opportunity. And right away I just hold a parent meeting, and it was different sort of community, different environment. Vets was built with a 2-feeder middle school system, but after about a year, BISD realized we got to compete with charter schools. We got to create some utopia of a campus. So we're going to go ahead and move Manzano to Pace, because Pace has been totally annihilated, and it was a horrible couple of years for them athletically. And now we're going to open it up, and we're going to have a STAMP program: science, technology, architecture, medical professions. And Lonnie, they told me over 2,000 kids from Brownsville would apply for this. And they were selecting maybe 350, 400, whatever it was, but you were getting elite of the elite there. And some of the elite athletes, kids who were smart, musicians, people that could act. It was just a mix of extremely talented kids. So that's kind of what I walked into next. But that has its pros and cons, though.
Yeah. So when you go to Vets, you were there how many? 6 years?
I was there 9 years.
9 years.
9 years. So right away I get there, and the beautiful thing was, I was able to get Scott Robb to go with me, because as soon as Tom Chavez got the job, he wanted everybody fired that was associated with me. So that included Scott Robb, that included Michael Moore, Joe, we call him Pope Martinez, and a couple others. So all of a sudden we were able to get Scott Robb, Michael Moore, Pope Martinez. So the good thing, I felt like, okay, good, I know these are my guys. I know these guys. And so they came on board, and Scott Robb was my OC. And it's a very interesting thing that happens, because that team was senior laden. The quarterback, Coach Guess had ran a totally different style offense, where it probably would have made more sense to have a kid named Adrian Alejandro be the quarterback. Scat back, super quick, but really couldn't throw the ball very well. Threw it like a shot put. And then you had Marco Munoz, who is more of a running back for them, but I noticed he's a baseball player, and the guy throws the ball pretty naturally. So that became the dilemma. I remember one day at Vets, is July, and both of those kids show up to my office, and we're at the table, and I'm like, "What's up, guys? What are you on?" It's like 5 p.m. And like, "Coach, we kind of want to tell you who we think should be the quarterback." I'm like, "Oh, cool, yeah, tell me who should be the quarterback." Because it's literally the end of July, and these kids are telling me, "Well, I don't know him. I've never seen him." And then, we kind of think Adrian should be the quarterback. And so Adrian was at Pace, and it was very controversial before I got to Vets. but it was very controversial where he went from being a pace stud to moving to veterans, and they tried to get him UIL, but at the end of the day, they approved him. So he was going to be ready to go. And so I went into it saying, all right, guys, I'm going to trust you guys. Adrian Alejandro, you're our starting quarterback. And so then the best thing that ever happened to us was we're going to play Port Isabel. Because we had scrimmages, and Adrian was looking okay with the run game, because that's a lot what we did. And Scott Robb loved to run the ball. And then Marco Munoz would get just a couple of reps. And then all of a sudden, we're going to play Port Isabel. And Adrian Alejandro gets pink eye. And it's a serious case of pink eye. I mean, he's out the whole week. So this is the first game of the year. This is my first game at Vets. So it's like, oh my God.
What do you have? Yeah.
So all of a sudden, Marco Munoz is our quarterback. So we go to Port Isabel, and we beat a damn good Port Isabel team. I think it was 14-7. And you know how many yards we threw for? 0, I think. Absolutely none. I think we ran for 297, and Marco was incredible. I was just afraid to throw it because we didn't really have much practice. Like the kids were still learning plays. It was really fun that year, though, because every week we were able to add stuff. It was fresh and exciting. And it was making us better, and so it was cool. And so we go on this cool run, and that group sacrificed a lot, because those kids, when they were juniors and when they said, Manzano, you're going back to Pace, all those kids that were Manzano kids had the option to go back to Pace or stay at Vets. And Vets, their junior year, if they stayed at Vets, the negative thing was, well, they're going to play mostly a JV schedule. They had 2 varsity games scheduled, maybe 3. So, but they're not going to get any sort of that true varsity season where you're in a district and you're competing. So they sacrificed that. So trust me, Lonnie, they let me know right away too. Some of the key guys on that team, the leaders, not in an ugly way, they're saying, I remember Marco Munoz, we called him Monkey. And he said, Coach, just so you understand, this is it for us. We just get one shot. A lot of us are great athletes. We know we are. We could have been varsity studs at Pace since we're sophomore, freshman year, but we decided to come here and we're here. But Coach, I'm just being honest with you, this is the only year we get. So holy cow. So all of a sudden, though, we put it together, and maybe it was a good thing, Lonnie, that we didn't know too much of the offense and all that, because it forced us to stay simple. And so we were very simple with what we did, and we're adding things here and there. And all of a sudden, we're playing Los Fresnos in Brownsville, a really good Los Fresnos team. Great football game, and we win. We beat Los Fresnos 17-10, and I just couldn't believe what was going on. And all of a sudden, now we're going to play Wesco East in the first round of the playoffs. And I don't know if you remember, there was a sports writer. They had a section where they gave little paragraphs on all the playoff games, and then at the very end he would put a score.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for ours, all he put was please ... and he put 49-7 East. So obviously I'm blowing that up, cutting it out, and we put it on our bulletin board, and so we win that game in dramatic fashion, comeback victory, I think 22-20 or 21-20. So great game, and East was great. But we won the game, and you can just imagine on the sideline, you could hear all of our kids as the clock was ticking down, just yelling, please. And even my brother later tells me him and my son were yelling the same thing. And so it was great. And then we go to San Antonio, and we're playing at the Alamo Stadium. We're playing Del Rio. And Monkey, the beautiful thing about him was he took care of the football. He hadn't thrown an interception all year. And he threw for a good maybe 1,300 yards. And Adrian Alejandro decided on a 94, a quick slant to all slants, he decided to convert that into a vertical route, because we call him the Wild Mustang for a reason. It was hard to control the guy. And he scored the winning touchdown against Los Fresnos. And as a corner, he knocked down the ball from Cologne. And Adrian Alejandro was 5'5".
Yeah, and Cologne was 6'2",
yeah,
6'3".
But Adrian Alejandro went way up there and knocked it out to kind of secure the win. But Adrian was his own character, though. I saw him just the other day. He's something else. And then now he's a very successful businessman and has his own thing. But he decided to go 4 vert instead of 94, and that thing got picked off and I think taken back. And all of a sudden we're down 14-0. After that, it was a very even game, but that kind of got us out, right? So that was the first year.
So, Coach, you 9 years of Brownsville Vets, and along the way, Los Fresnos opens up. And you're Vets, and you're being successful.
Well, and we're being successful. We're getting the playoffs,
yes.
But we hadn't won a district title.
Okay.
And I'll be honest with you, someone from the community did come to me that has quite a bit of pull, and he said, you need to apply for this job. And it was late at night. I was throwing a hay bale. My dad had cows in our backyard, whatever. So, and it kind of startled me. And then he repeats himself, you got to apply for this job. Mm-hmm. So then, all right, I'll talk about it tomorrow. So, but I already knew what we had. We had a kid at Vets who was with us as a freshman, and after we lost our first game, we were undefeated. And then we lost to San Benito by a point, and I said, okay, Nimo, we're taking Gustavo now to the varsity. And his first game against Harlingen High, he has 12 tackles, 9 solo, 2 big hits. And I saw him in pregame. He bumps into me doing a backpedaling drill. I'm like, Gustavo, you okay? You nervous? He's like, about what, coach? Like the coolest cat in the world. And then all of a sudden, he played quarterback at middle school too. And then so we said, shoot, let's give him some quarterback time. Even though we had a really good athlete ahead of him named Marcus Castillo, who was kind of a really good player. But we said, well, shoot, let's let Gustavo have this last game of the year. And first play, trips left, 24 dart. That defensive end goes, and he pulls it, takes it 75 yards to the house. He makes about 5 guys miss. He looks like, oh my God. So he ends up being our dude that game and had a crazy good game. But then he moves to Florida. His mom, everybody moves to Florida. And I thought, oh my gosh, what just happened? And then the following year happens, and we're at Westaco. We're going to play a playoff game. And then everybody starts telling me, hey, Gustavo's coming back. Gustavo's got not. Hey, oh, he's not. He's not coming back. And then so he shows up to the game, and all of a sudden he's there walking on the field with the kids. I don't say a word to him. I act like I don't care. But inside I'm like, oh my God. If Gustavo Vasquez comes back, oh my goodness. So lo and behold, they move back. The mom's back, and and we see real quick in the spring and what he was doing. He was a district champion in the hurdles for a couple of years, and just about 5'10", 225 tank who was so athletic. So he ends up junior year. So two big things happen. We got Gustavo Vasquez as our quarterback, and we got Abel Martinez as our running back. He's got great speed. And then I'm able to make Larry Vincent leaves us to go to Falfurrias. He was defense coordinator. We hired Mike Evans. So what was going on in Los Fresnos during that time? So I decided I'm not even going to apply for Los Fresnos because, again, I haven't proven myself. I haven't even won a district title. How can I go back to? I see Los Fresnos as so. But as they hired their new coach, one of the things they did was they took a coordinator and they made him like a assistant coach. They gave him some title, but I never had a conversation with him in my life. But I get the phone number from Mike Evans, and I just call him out of the blue, and I'm thinking, God, I hope he answers, and he answers. I said, Mike Evans, I'm gonna be real blunt, man, to the point. You need to come be my defense coordinator next year. I heard you got some sort of, change. He says, well, I'm still this. I go, nah, bull, that ain't crap. You got demoted. Just admit it. If you want to be you need to come over here with us. We're gonna have a great year next year. And then he comes and visits with me, and all I turn around my screen and I go, all right, we're gonna talk about our team. So I'm going through all of our kids, and he just stays quiet. He's just kind of analyzing everything and doesn't say much. But then he later calls me and says, man, as much as you know about every one of those kids and all that, he goes, I'm all in. I'm going. So all of a sudden now I'm with Mike Evans, and then we just have an incredible year, and. We're district champions. First time I ever had that as a head coach. Great experience. And then Mike Evans, we do so good that everybody's like, hey, this guy Mike Evans needs to be a head coach. So he gets a head job at PSJ Southwest. Yes. So then all of a sudden we're looking for a DC. And at some point, a lot of big names were applying, and Lanny Wilson and some other really good, great coaches. And all of a sudden Mike Evans calls me, hey, Dave, would you consider my dad to be a defense coordinator for you? I go, well, Dave Evans? If you're from the Valley and if you heard about Dave Evans, he's like a cartoon character. That's someone that everybody just respects and knows, and he's a football guy, but he's a very gruff individual and very physical and I never would imagine being able to work with Dave Evans. So I said, well, yeah, I was telling him to apply. And when it was all said and done, we chose Dave, and so that first year with Dave, we won another district title, this time outright, like with Dave. So all of a sudden, that's happening, but it was a combination of a lot of things. Like we had Gustavo for 2 years be our quarterback, and we had great coaching, and but then we now all of a sudden we're kind of a playoff team again. So that was that. But that's kind of goes in cycles. But Los Fresnos finally does have some seasons where I think it was 3 of them where. I think you add up the wins, it was 7, 2, 3, and 2, I think. And I said, okay, wow, I never thought I'd even consider coming back, but this is different now. Now you can go there and they won't burn their house down if you don't win all your games. You know, they can you can go in there and try to improve something and build on something, and maybe. So even though that time nobody had to tell me anything, I just knew I was going to apply for this job now. And I remember going to the interview, just took the day off and then driving, and I was just driving, very short drive from my house, but I was just tearing up and crying. And it was because I was thinking about my grandma, Teresa, who grew up in Los Fresnos and everything she went through. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I can't believe I'm driving to an interview where I can be the head coach. I held coaches to such a high standard that I didn't feel worthy of that, especially the Los Fresnos coaches. So all of a sudden I'm again going to this interview and was so incredibly at peace with it. There was zero nerves, and that doesn't mean I had a good interview, but I'm just saying that's just how it went through. And then when Dr. Gonzalo Salazar, who's just the greatest leader ever, calls me and tells me he wants to talk to me again, and I wasn't the only one, so it's kind of like a second interview. But after we talked, and he said, Coach, I want you to come back to Los Fresnos. Man, it was very emotional for me. And now understanding this, it's such a responsibility, and you just have flashes now of every coach that affected you. And they're not all just head coaches. It's my middle school coaches, all the coaches you've worked with, and I'm like, wow. So the most important thing at that point is the staff, man. And there was already so many good parts on our staff, like Brent Blackman and Greg Pena and Jaime Vela, etc. I can go on. Rene Morales still here, and Doug Dahlberg was there. But I was able to bring in two guys and brought in at the time Fausto Atkinson to coach the offensive line and Coach Neil Schuster. And that was big, and just to have some loyalty. And so we come in and we have some good things happen to us that first year. We're not district champs, but win a playoff game in pretty dominant fashion against Mission. And then we play San Antonio Brennan over there in San Antonio, and we get it handed to us. But we have some momentum. Matt Padilla came in and did a great job as quarterback of that first year system, and Hector Muniz really just primarily was a defensive player playing corner. And that's one thing, Lonnie, is as soon as I got to Los Fresnos, I only had maybe a couple of days with Matt and Hector because they were going to transfer to the baseball class. And that shook me up. I'd never seen that before, but it was too early for me to kind of make any changes like that. But so we just had to do what we could in the summer to catch them up, man. So I felt very, very behind as far as these two guys are our two best athletes. Like, how are we going to make this work? And then I'm moving Hector basically from defense to offense. One of the defensive coaches told me when I came in one day, and I said, all right, guys, I do know one thing. Hector Muniz can go. He's a special sort of player. And I was told right away, well, he plays defense. He started for us since he was a freshman. He's a 3-year starter at corner. So they were kind of telling me, hey, sorry, but he's an untouchable. So I said, well, look, I'm telling you right now, he will never come off the field on offense, ever. And if he needs to play defense, let's play him on defense. But we're going to probably have to spell him there because I don't think he's going to be able to play the whole game. But he will never, ever leave the field on offense. And sure enough, he had an amazing year. And I think won some sort of superlative award, maybe Offensive Player of the Year, whatever. But that was big. One thing we needed was instant credibility coming in. We had to be successful that first year, we all felt like, because if not, it's kind of like, well, it's the same old thing or whatever. So that was big that those kids put it together. Our defense was stout as heck. And Brent Blackman did such a great job. And I'll tell you, he and I go back a little bit. If you rewind a little bit, when Dave Evans ends up leaving, first person I called was Mike Evans. I said, Mike, I need some advice, man. Who should we hire? And without hesitation, you need to talk to Brent Blackman. Give him a call. So I did. And he came and he visited. And he was, I think, seriously considering maybe, coming to Vets, even though he lives way out kind of far in the Bayview, Los Fresnos area. So, but at the end of the day, after thinking about it, he said, David, I'm sorry, thank you, but I'm going to stay where I'm at. And no ill feelings. It was great. But it's so funny how now I'm coming back and I'm working with Brent Blackman, who I try to recruit to come over there. So, anyways, and finally, though, the most important thing that was happening during that first summer, too, though, this is interesting. Matt Padilla, even though I already lost him for most of the spring semester because of baseball, he also had about half of the summer where he had to go to baseball tournaments. So we're like, what are we going to do on those days? And then Rex Halford was our next guy, but he was a golfer who had all his golf stuff. So shoot, who's this kid coming with his older brother? Oh, it's Robert Pineda. And he's what? He's a 7th grader? Hey, Robert, you got the varsity huddle today when we go offense. So Robert Pineda was already running the offense. He was going to be an 8th grader with the kids that were going to be seniors. And I wanted to see for myself, because I heard some really good things about him, but I wanted to see for myself how he carried himself and so forth. But you could tell real quick that, hey, this guy might be ready to go his freshman year, because that's something that back in the old days, like with Leonel Garza, freshmen weren't even a thought, in my opinion, based on just. But and even a sophomore was like, that sophomore, if he's on varsity, he better be starting or he better not be on the varsity, and it's a great thing to go by because sophomores need to be playing. But all of a sudden, to even consider a freshman, but things did change for me while I was at Vets, because we moved up. Gustavo was a freshman. He did great things. So that kind of broke my mindset of, hey, sometimes a kid is ready when they're freshmen. And now you see guys like Coach Kaufman at North and Coach Littleton at Memorial, who have always been successful with bringing in a few, 2 or 3 special freshmen and allowing them to go ahead and grow and develop. And
you talked about that with Rivera, because you said you kept those.
We
that
did.
he
I
was under
did.
you, and you had said that.
I
Man,
did.
I should have. I should have.
I should have.
That's what I'm saying.
There was at least 5 guys that would have made us better right away. Yeah.
Yeah, Coach, and I mean, and Robert Pineda, I mean, great individual, great kid, just overall great. You know, I got to teach him math one year, and it was awesome. Coach, and talking about, you know, we've gone from the beginning to where you're currently right now, and I know that this past year, district championship, outright district championship, which had been, you had mentioned the time, and I'm thinking
2008, I want to say.
2008.
So it was a good, what was that, 16 years or something like that. It was a lot of years. But the probably the best thing and the worst thing that ever happened was Robert's, I guess, sophomore year, when we go over to PSJ, and we have like a 2-game winning streak on these guys, and all of a sudden we're going over there, I think a little overconfident because they were really good, and the game was a cold game. It's rainy, it's wet, and balls are flying out for both teams, and then nobody can do anything. And all of a sudden they start breaking away, and they end up just beating us 35-7, and it was a horrible feeling. And the seniors, I noticed, they didn't really care a whole lot. A lot of them, I'm sure some did, but some were hooping and hollering it up, and I get it, it's over, whatever. But that's not the feeling that I felt, and that's not the feeling that. So I know that next day, Lonnie, as a coach, I felt like a complete failure. It was a Saturday, and I'll be honest with you, I remember my cousin Nisi had a birthday party, and Nisi, I can't go to the party, and I just started bawling with her. I was crying on the phone, and just telling her how I mentally was just not right. I can't go. I can't face the community right now about how we played. I can't do it. And then Neil Schuster and I started having conversations that Saturday night about, all right, man, what do we need to do? What do we need to do to steer the ship right? And so we, Neil said, shoot, Coach, we need a slogan. We need something like a saying. And all right. And then we need this, we need that. And so the next day, it's a Sunday, and I'm calling him, and I got it, man. Like, this is it. Like, we're gonna burn the ships this year. Like, that's what we're doing, BTS. And so that became our thing. So when we get back to school, and that next Monday, we immediately, I let all the coaches know, look, I'm going to start today, the first day off, and I'm going to explain BTS. I'm going to explain the history of it, where it comes from. Hernan Cortez, who's in Cuba or one of those islands, and their whole goal, though, was to take over South America or whatever, Mexico, and then they got pretty comfortable, and the leader there was like, no, we're not going to go. But Hernan Cortez took a bunch of rogue guys and 11 ships, and they said, screw it, one night, they go without permission. And then all of a sudden, once they get there, it's tough times, man. It's difficult. Life, just living, is difficult. It's hot. It's humid. All these things, and all the guys who came with them, all those rogue renegades, they're like, "What are we doing here? Let's go back." So then he decides one night, "I'm gonna have to burn the ships, just to show them like we ain't no options. We ain't going back. If we going back, we're going back in their ships." So that was the first day of me telling the kids about that historical story and sharing a couple things on Sports U of history of it. And then the next day, I talked about what it meant to me. I go, look, I got to burn some ships. Man, I've got to find a better way to have discipline on this team. We're going to come up with I'm going to find something. I'm going to find a discipline contract. And now it's going to be black and white. There's not going to be any of this. Well, what are we going to do if this guy did? No, it's, oh, you did this? Okay, that's 2 points. Oh, you did that? Oh, that's 4 points. Oh, you're at 10 points? It's time to call mom and dad and say, Mom and Dad, he's got 10 points. 2 more points and he's gone. And then, so we stuck by that, and we 5 or 6 kids maxed out on points, and we had to get them out of the program. That was huge, and I got that from a Nick Saban book. I remember reading it a long time ago, and I was like, God, he had something about a point system, and so I kind of copied it, but made it kind of high school version of it. And then, and we made our weight room workouts different. You know, we were using a rack program, which is great, but I didn't feel like it was. We went back to old school. I thought, well, how can we make this like it was when Scott Ford was here, and when we were lifting weights back in the day? So we tried to implement that as close as we possibly could to our weight room situation. So our kids, when they heard about what we were going to do, I kid you not, Lonnie, we had a lot of our key guys. I was hearing whispers they were going to quit because they were just seeing the workout on paper, and they'd scared them to death that we can't humanly do that. How can you expect us to do squats 3 times a week? Because they were used to kind of having a leg day and that was going to be over with. We ain't doing that no more. So another thing that at a certain point, it took me a few months, but at a certain point I realized I need to be different. I'm not doing a good enough job calling the offense, and maybe there's someone better than me. So I'm thinking of blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, I thought, I got Neil Schuster here with me. Neil Schuster's so all in. He coaches like every play is the last play of the game. And he's been a defensive coach, I'm telling you, Lonnie, for the last 11, 12 years. And he maybe coached some offense at Lopez at the freshman level for 2 years. So all of a sudden, I made a decision. He's going to be our offensive coordinator. And what that means is now Fausto, who took a leap of faith with me, now he's not going to be. I was able to do some things and make him run game coordinator, but that's a demotion, right? So horrible thing, tough thing to do, but I had to do it. So I handed over the keys to Neil to the quarterbacks also. Now I needed to be a head coach that was going to all the positions and seeing what was happening. And now when defensive coaches have meetings, I see it for myself. And I become more of a maybe true head coach, as they say. And then I didn't know what was going to happen. And so let me rewind, Lonnie. I knew Neil was coming to offense, but I didn't know about the coordinator thing yet. I will say that. But I will say this. As soon as we were getting closer to spring ball, we started doing more football. I kind of challenged Neil. Hey, Neil, put a workout together for us and script it, whatever. So, and he just was all in. Like you could tell he spent maybe an hour on it, hour and a half. And hey, make the schedule again for us tomorrow. That was a good schedule. So he became the guy that kind of was taking that over and doing it. And then in spring ball, we went through it, and I started giving him a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. We do 7-on-7. I would never not be there. I said, hey, I'm gonna go watch the other session. You got it, Neil. So I was kind of, the best thing probably one of the best things I did was that, and that's what you learn in coaching is you gotta let go of some things. And I came to realize that there were maybe some times where I felt like, man, I'm a pretty good play caller. And some people would compliment me at times, but I wasn't. Deep down, I could have been better. And so I threw Neil in the deep end last year, and I helped him a lot. It was early on. It was let's do that, and he's calling it, but I'm helping. But after a while, man, he was on cruise control, man. And now it became, I'm going to way step back and more look for matchups and little things, which I started loving that. So I still felt like I was giving something to the team that was of value, but in such a different way. And man, it helped me keep my sanity, because when you're game planning all week and you're the one watching the 20 hours of film and then you got to do athletic director things too.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
It can get a little bit tough and a little bit stressful. So him being able to kind of live up to that challenge and take it and win with it, that was huge for me as a person, just for my mental well-being too. And he ain't gonna be here long, because he's gonna be a head coach somewhere. I know he's already got calls back in the spring, people wanting him, but he decided he wasn't gonna entertain any of those yet. He's got some more work to do here. So maybe I need just a little break, or maybe someone else can do it next. But yeah, Neil, I can go on and on. Now, coming into this season, Fausto Atkinson wasn't real happy for a year, and I get it. I don't blame him. I've been the same way. So he's moved on, and we are bringing in a coach. So I worked with for a year at Brownsville Vets. His name is JT Torres, and JT was recommended by Neil. They worked at Lopez together, and then at a very young age, he became Gabe Benya's offensive coordinator at Edinburgh Economides.
Okay.
So he was a 20-something-year-old offensive coordinator, but making a drive with little kids from Brownsville to Edinburgh every day. So that wore on him. So he decided, I'm going to go ahead and step away from the coordinator. I'm going to take a demotion as far as a coach. I'm going to go coach at Lopez, be a varsity coach. But then after a certain amount of time, we were able to get him at Vets, and the guy was real big on character education. And that came from him playing for Tony V and coaching with him. Tony V's real big on it. And I think that's why he's so darn successful. And he was a brilliant coach. And he left because Tony V asked him to be the offense coordinator at Port Isabel. So that's why we lost JT. But now coming into this year, with Fall still leaving, JT's coming in. And I'm personally just very excited because the man is you see it. He's a great father, a great family man, and extremely intelligent, and be coaching English and coaching for the Falcons now.